Hi, Empress Justice here. If you'd like to check out daily readings, you can check them out on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. They're all uploaded, they're all up there, so great, well organized. Now, update on me. Things have been like super quiet over the last few days. The mum's not here, the kid's not here. So like everything has just been really, really quiet. The other neighbors haven't really said anything. Some other neighbors tried to be slick and gaslight me, but you know, it's not anything big. It's very, very noticeable how quiet everything is when the family's not in the house. And you know, ironically, it actually makes me feel like I want to go out, because it's like I have I have the quiet space and the head space to think. The only thing that's really stopping me at this point is my body, because again, I've been fired up my jaw, and you can see right here, there's a mark here. It's not a pimple. It looks like one, but it's actually a blister from where the weapons have hit. I had a similar one on my hand that's kind of disappeared because I keep moisturizing my hand. But it's like you can see where the entry point is on the weapons. So the place where I feel the most pain is here, but you can see the entry point as to where, like you got, you know, you can see same things all over my head and my face. There are entry points at which the directed energy weapons will hit. Like sometimes it looks like an ordinary pimple, but it can actually be a sign of where the weapon has been hitting. So yeah, it's just my body this time that's kind of letting me down a little bit. But then again, my diet hasn't been the best. Yeah, it's always been shit. Not gonna lie. But, you know, and then on top of that, I don't want to go into it now. But, you know, it's my body that's really letting me down. It's not anything that's going on here. It's been really, really quiet. Yeah, again, nobody said anything much. What I do want to talk about, though, is the situation with Priti Patel and the Rwanda situation. We hear so much propaganda about, you know, about immigration and about asylum seekers, especially black and brown ones, and especially Muslim ones. Because, again, MI5 put in, you know, in an advisory capacity, they basically said, like, just watch all the immigrants that come in here anyway. So that's always been a thing. It's always been a thing to be suspicious of immigrants and suspicious of anybody who's not white. So that's always been a thing, right? And it's also been a thing to keep a tab on Muslims as well, because as you know, like the biggest networks in power, I wouldn't be surprised if the biggest networks in this country, or the most powerful networks, were Knights Templar. Okay, or Knights Templar under a different name. So because they're Knights Templar under a different name, of course they're going to come after anybody who's black, brown, or Muslim because of the connection to the Moors. So they want to avoid a Moorish invasion or what have you. But that's just a theory, really. That's just a theory that I'm using to kind of attach to what I'm seeing from the Tory party and from Priti Patel and all the rest of it. As for Priti Patel, given her background, it kind of doesn't surprise me that she's targeting other black and brown people like this. When it comes to Rwanda, some of the stuff that I've been hearing, like I recorded the meeting, and I'm going to take some notes on it. And then what I'm going to do is, if my attention span can hold up long enough, what I'm going to do is take notes on it. And I'm going to give you guys the details on exactly the situation in Rwanda, why it's so dangerous that, I mean, we all know why it's dangerous that asylum seekers have been brought over there. But, you know, it needs to be reiterated why it's so dangerous to bring asylum seekers to a country that even Britain says has a bad human rights record. Now, this is not to slander Rwanda. I don't know about Rwanda, but I know about this country, and I know about the way that they do things. Okay, so when you know, if I have the inclination, what I'll do is I'll take notes from what I've heard about Rwanda, and I will kind of give you guys a lowdown on why it's so dangerous that so many black and brown people are being sent to Rwanda. You know, the ones who aren't given safe passage with visas anyway, because the Ukrainian refugees are given safe passage with visas, but the black and brown ones aren't. So, yeah, when I have time, I'll give you the rundown on why that's so toxic. But I have advice for my fellow TIs. If you really want to know how the world is going, if you really want to know what our governments are up to and how bad things really are and how badly people are really being treated, talk to peace organizations, talk to human rights organizations, talk to them, because they've got the lowdown on everything that's happening. Like there's a few layers to this social hierarchy. So TIs are technically at the bottom, right? I say technically because some TIs have better lives than people who are not TIs. But in terms of social hierarchy, TIs are at the bottom. And from an economic standpoint, anybody who fights for peace, anybody who fights for justice, they're kind of just a step above us. So if you really want to know what's going on in the world and how the technology against us is being used, talk to mental health organizations, talk to peace organizations, talk to human rights organizations, talk to them, because they will give you the real story on what's actually going on what's actually happening in the world. Don't read the fucking Daily Mail. Don't read whatever right-wing publication is trying to suck your dick, because that's exactly what they're doing with us. They're trying to suck our dicks. Get to us through the grassroots movements, which they've been doing for decades now. They're trying to get to us through the grassroots movements. Instead of making assumptions about refugees, talk to refugee organizations. Talk to peace organizations. Talk to any organization who wants to stop the war. They will give you the lowdown on everything that's going on, because these people are well-researched, they're well-educated, and they have personal experience working with vulnerable people. Talk to them. Talk to them. And you can see exactly how social experimentation with us is being used, and who they are most brutal with when all is said and done. Talk to them. All this whining about how, you know, asylum seekers are taking over the country or fucking... No. First of all, you have to remember that within the network of MI5, up until very recently, it was white Catholics. Not even white Anglo-Protestants. White fucking rich white Catholics. We're at the top of the fucking ladder in terms of MI5 and their connections. And by the way, MI5 and the Tory party historically have a very close relationship. So all this talk about literally, as a country, we take in less asylum seekers than anybody else. And yet we're over here whining about immigrants. We're over here whining about immigrants when we literally take less immigrants than any other country out there. That's A. B. Stop believing these people when they talk about how immigrants are this, that, and the third. Remember, there has been a conflict between Christianity and the Islam religion that goes way fucking back. We're talking about hundreds of years at least. So this targeting of black and brown people, and in particular Muslims, there's a historical significance behind that. Hell, if you read anything about middle-age fantasy, that's full of allegory about the Moors versus the Catholics, or the Muslims versus the Catholics, or the, you know, Kingdom of Heaven allegory. There's all kinds of allegory in middle-age fantasy stories. That's why most of the people who follow middle-age fantasy are so fucking racist. There's all kinds of allegory relating to the Knights Templar versus the Nazari assassins. The Nazari assassins are Islam, and the Knights Templar are Catholics, Christians. That's what all of this is about. This has never ended. This has never ended. This hasn't been over, like, I think it actually started with the Romans, but it's kind of developed into something else now. It's developed into You know, this is an ongoing thing. It's been going on for the longest time. So that's why these people are being targeted. This wasn't a white country originally. Again, Tacitus, the Roman emperor, came over to this country and saw everybody here was black. This was not a white country originally. St. George, apparently he was Turkish. Another Muslim person, he was Turkish. St. George, that same St. George that we think is as English as fish and chips, my guy was a Turkish guy. My guy was Turkish and probably Muslim. Like, my guy, like, you don't understand exactly how deep this shit goes. I'm not explaining it very well, but the thing is, I've been reading up on this. You know, this has, you know, people think that, you know, alchemical fraternities and religious wars and race wars, that all of that is just a secondary thought. It's not a secondary thought. You have to remember there are, it's like I said before, there are people who believe in alchemical teachings and know exactly how to use them. And it's those people who are at war with each other, and they're using the rest of us as pawns. The Nizari assassins, or the Islam religion, they actually know more about alchemy than you and I might think. In fact, alchemy comes from them. The Arab world was one of the civilizations that brought alchemy to the masses to begin with. Sorry, I'm going on a whole different tangent, but it's like when you really begin to unpack everything, you start to see now why black and brown people are targeted so much and why the Muslims are targeted so much. There is a whole occult significance behind it, as well as a political significance behind it. In fact, politics are the poor man's economics. Economics are the greedy man's law, and law is the unenlightened man's alchemy. So there are all kinds of different layers to this. I wish I could say it in a way that makes sense. But this has been in the making for like centuries. This is not new. None of this is new. But again, if you want to find out exactly what's going on, talk to peace organizations, talk to human rights organizations. Better yet, talk to people who have actually emigrated to this country. Talk to them. Talk to immigrants. Talk to actual immigrants. Talk to fucking people who are in peace organizations. Talk to human rights organizations. Talk to people who actually want to stop wars and who understand the economic significance behind those wars. Talk to them. They will give you the real and give you the lowdown on what's actually going on in the world. There is no white genocide. You're not being taken over. That's a fucking illusion. In fact, the more rare white people are, is the more power they have. Because again, how does economics work? It's all about who's rarest, who's most beautiful, who's rarest, who's most beautiful, and who is most useful, i.e., who has the most resources. White folk are always going to be the rarest, and therefore they are always going to be the most powerful. Like, there is no genocide. If there is a genocide, it's white folk themselves that are engineering it. Come on now. And what happens when white people stop being rare? What happens when white people become surplus? What happens then? Because the way human beings are divided up according to their race, gender, and what have you, we're divided up like stock. The people who are in power, they see us as stock, nothing more. Black, white, brown, doesn't matter. They see all of us as stock. And there are human lives at stake because of how we're seen. I'm not making any fucking sense. Like if I could tell you in a way that makes sense. But this shit has been going on for centuries now. This has always been dirty. It's always been evil. It's always been... This is how human beings do each other. It's always been evil. I wish I could tell you in a way that makes sense. But it's only later on down the line that you're going to get anything that I'm saying. But yeah, this has been like centuries in the making, at least, if not thousands of years. This has been an ongoing thing. It's not new. But again, people are deluded into thinking that the world is so much better than it used to be. No, we're more comfortable than we used to be. There's a difference. But yeah, this whole thing with Rwanda, it's not going to end well. In fact, what I said before was that every single country on the planet was closing, slowly but surely closing their borders, which means imports and exports were going to be first hit, which means the cost of living goes up, which means people can't travel in and out as easily as they would like, which means, you know, those who come in or those who leave are increasingly at the discretion of those who are wealthy. And that's what leads to the Rwanda situation. Because, you know, everything that's going on with COVID, that's been going on with Rwanda as well. Cost of living has definitely gone up. Cost of living has definitely gone up over there. It's harder to come in and out of the country. So what happens? What happens is that those with the money, they don't just decide where they go. They decide where the rest of us go as well. They decide who comes in and out of the country. So with that, what happens is that the military psychiatric and prison industrial complexes, they expand in a way. They expand in a way that they haven't done before. Basically, what we're seeing is another Holocaust, only the British now have elected to take their Holocaust offshore. And that's what I feel like I'm seeing here. I feel like I'm seeing that they're taking their Holocaust offshore, which gives the racists over here even more room to delude themselves that they're good people and that they're just ordinary people living their lives, when really everything that they've ever said or done when it comes to people who are immigrants or comes to people who are poor has led to this situation. Freedom of speech ain't free, and yet nobody wants to pay the fucking toll. Freedom of speech ain't free, and yet nobody wants to pay the fucking toll. People want to complain about immigrants. People want to complain about their presence here. And yet nobody wants to accept the consequences of what that means. Our living situation is so much worse than it used to be, but it used to be like just 5 years ago. And that's all because of racism and bigotry. If people can't come over here, then what happens to produce? And if produce can't come over here, what happens to our way of life? But nobody hears me though. Nobody hears me though. It's a reset. It's a reset. Everybody knows that. They're trying to reset the population. Famine, disease, fucking civil war, which is basically all the, you know, black rights activists versus white supremacists, that type of shit, civil war. And then you got ordinary war, Russia versus Ukraine. Although that could be civil technically, but it looked like it might be expanding with Finland joining NATO. Fuck me, man. Oh, God. Oh, Lord. It's a mess. It's a real mess. But yeah, I don't think I made any sense in this fucking rant, because there's so much I want to say. It's just not coming out like, but there's so much to unpack. I feel like Neo in the Matrix. It's like I can see all the fucking coding, but it's like I know exactly what I'm seeing. I can see all the coding in amidst the illusions, but I can't for the life of me think of where to start in describing them. That's why my rants never make any fucking sense when I'm talking about this shit. It's just, how do you find the words? But yeah, this is humanity. This is what we do to each other. This is what we do to each other. Anyway, I gotta go. I gotta do my readings for today. Well, I gotta do my readings. And what else have I got to do today? I've got some studying to do as well. So, yeah. This is nothing new. Nothing new at all. It's bad, but it's nothing new. And don't mistake comfort for progress. We still have a long way to go. And believe it or not, we're actually getting further from getting there, not closer. And it's all because we are quicker to exploit and capitalize on the knowledge that we've gained rather than actually learning from it and utilizing it. Yeah, figures that once we start waking up. This world is so messy. This world is so messy. So much bullshit. But anyway, I love you guys. Take care. I've got to get on with the rest of my day. I love you. Bye, my fellow TRs. Bye-bye.